It's a program of Jewish information, inspiration, motivation, and transformation here on the Gavriel Sanders Show.
It's great to have you along with me today for the next 28 minutes for this audio magazine that we call the Gavriel Sanders Show. Coming to you from the capital of the Jewish world, Yerushalayim. Today's lineup is, in a word, compelling. First, Rabbi Mordechai Becher explains the mysterious commandment known as Shatnez, not mixing wool and linen in a garment. What's that about? You'll find out. Then I was rummaging through the archives of the program from maybe 18 years back, and I found a commentary on the Times from my Torah mommy, Rebbetzin Esther Jungreis. What she had to say then is so relevant today, so hold on to your Strymol. And finally, Rabbi Pinchas Taylor illuminates us on the history and the meaning behind the Star of David. Has it always been a Jewish symbol? So it's a full program. Let's get started with Rabbi Mordechai Becher.
Okay, one of the most perplexing prohibitions in Judaism, in the Torah, which really is just very, very strange, is what we call Shatnez, which is a prohibition against wearing clothing which has within it wool and linen sewn or intertwined or joined together. Biblical prohibition found in the book of Leviticus 19. Very, very strange prohibition, defined usually as a chok. A chok means a statute, meaning something which we don't really understand. Doesn't mean that there's no reason for it. It just means that the reason is very distant from the human being. It's not like the prohibition against theft, where it's pretty obvious. You know, we can understand that from many different perspectives. You know, private property, respect for each other, and social contract, and, you know, all that type of stuff. But it comes to something like this. Don't wear a garment with wool and linen in it. It's a really strange thing. The Boston Rebbe, famous Hasidic Rebbe from Boston, obviously, when he first came to Boston, he mentioned that he went to a professor at MIT who was his expertise was fabrics. I'm not exactly sure what the field is called, but he was probably he's a professor at MIT. He's probably one of the world's leading experts in fabric, science of fabrics. So the Boston Rebbe had gone to him to ask for advice on how to test for the presence of, let's say, linen or wool and stuff like that. At the end of this, he asked the professor, he says, listen, professor, in all your studies, you've been studying fabrics for years and years. You are the leading expert. You know, have you ever seen anything that would indicate some problem with the mixing wool and linen? And the professor said, look, Rabbi, I'll be honest with you, absolutely none whatsoever. He says, but let me tell you something. I've been studying this stuff for about 30 years. Science has been studying it for about 100 years. He says, the Torah's been around for 3,500 years. I'd stick with that if I was you. So anyway, that was his advice. But Rav Samson Raphael Hirsch, despite that, tells us there is an insight, because Maimonides says that indeed, even though something is described as a chok, a statute, which is generally beyond our understanding, he says there's an obligation for us to delve into them nevertheless and to try to understand them. So here we go. Rav Hirsch points out, what is in common between the world of fauna, flora, and the human being? That is to say, what is in common between the vegetable, the animal, and the human being? So, looking at the person next to you and say, I can see a lot in common with, but no, what I mean is the following, right? What is in common between the vegetable, the animal, the human being? The answer is, Rav Hirsch says that all these are living and they all require sustenance, i.e. food, and reproduction. So the vegetable eats, in a sense, it absorbs nutrients from the soil, sunlight, water, so on and so forth. The animal eats, the human being eats, and each one in their own way also reproduces. So as opposed to the rock or metal, etc., inanimate objects, the vegetable, the animal, and the human being all have two things in common. Pretty much survival through both ingestion, food, and reproduction. Now, however, there's clear distinctions between the vegetable, the animal, and the human. What is the superiority of the animal over the vegetable? You would say the animal has intelligence. It can move. It can do all types of things with this intelligence. Now, if we ask you, what does the animal do with its superior talents over the vegetable? What does the animal use its superior talents for? Or for what does the animal use its superior talents? Eating and reproduction. In a sense, the animal intertwines the vegetative aspect with its superior animal abilities. It has got the vegetative, i.e. reproduction and food, together with its animal aspect. There's no distinction. Really, from that perspective, what's the animal? It's an advanced zucchini. It is a super tomato, right? It is just a tomato with legs, right? Which instead of just sitting there and waiting for you to water it, it can go out and drink some water. Big deal. The superiority of the animal is used only for its vegetative. Now, the human being has in common with the animal and the vegetable also reproduction and food, survival. But the human being clearly has superiority over the animal and the vegetable. We have a vastly greater intelligence. We have the soul. We have free will. We have moral sense, spiritual sense. I mean, a tremendous superiority. Now, there are people who use all the superiority over the animal and the vegetable to do what? Basically, for food and reproduction. Just survival. So what are they? Again, they're an advanced cucumber. They are the super squash. That's it, right? The terrific tomato. I mean, if the person is using their superiority over the animal and over the vegetable just to survive, then they are basically may as well be an animal or a vegetable. So it's interesting. What is it that the human does to express his or her superiority over the animals? What do we do? The answer is we wear clothing. Clothing is an expression of the dignity of the human soul. As the Reb Zrachia Halevi says in his introduction to the Talmud, he says, Hanefesh nikreit kavod. The soul is called honor, dignity. It is actually the dignity that a human being feels. The feeling of honor is an expression of the soul. It actually is an expression of the soul of the human being. And that expression of the soul is expressed by clothing. In fact, the Talmud calls clothing mechabdusay, that which expresses or gives honor and respect. Now, in the area of clothing, which expresses our superiority over the animals, what we are being told is the following. Don't take the wool, i.e. the animal aspect, i.e. its superiority over the vegetable world, and the vegetable, i.e. linen, and twine them together. What we're saying here, it's a reminder in our clothing, it's a reminder in that which expresses my superiority over the animal. There's a little reminder there which says, you know what, don't just be an advanced zucchini. Don't take your superiority over the animal and superiority over the vegetable just to be a better vegetable. Don't take your advanced intelligence, don't take your sensitivity, your soul, your moral sense, your spiritual sense, and everything else that makes you a human expressed by the clothing. Take that and tie it down and tie it in to the vegetative aspect of the human being, just to be a better reproducer and a better eater. That's pathetic. So therefore, in our clothing, there's a reminder. Now, it's interesting to note that there's two types of clothing where there's no prohibition of shatnes, of the wool and linen. One is tzitzit, or a talus, right? And the other is the clothing of the high priest, clothing of the priest in the temple. Why in those two is there no prohibition? Because those are clothing you're not wearing for survival. Those are clothing you're clearly wearing only for one purpose, service of God. You don't need a reminder in the clothing of the priest who's wearing it only to go into the temple to serve God. He doesn't need a reminder that the superiority of the human being is used in order to get to a higher level of spirituality, because that's what he's doing. That's the only reason he's wearing the clothing. The same is true of tzitzit, of that fringe garment that we wear, because the only reason I'm wearing that, I'm not wearing it for survival. In fact, in certain places, it may threaten your survival. I'm wearing it only for one thing. I'm wearing it because I want to get closer to God. I'm fulfilling his commandments. I don't need a reminder there that not to use my intelligence just to be an advanced vegetable. And what is shatnez, therefore? Shatnez is in our clothing, which is an expression of my dignity, an expression of my soul, an expression of my inherent superiority over inanimate matter, over vegetables, and over the animals. I am taking that and I am saying and making a statement that I am not intertwining the animal with the vegetative. I am understanding that the superiority that I do indeed have over the rest of nature, over all of nature, that superiority is to be dedicated to a higher purpose, to a higher goal, to becoming a better person. So I think that's how Rav Hirsch understands the essence of the idea of shatnez. I mean, there are Kabbalistic ideas involved in it, not a reminder of one of the first sins and most terrible sins of humanity was Cain killing Abel. And tradition, we are told, is that Abel brought wool. Abel, who was the shepherd, brought wool. I think it was Abel. Maybe I'm confusing which one is which. One brought wool, one brought linen. And, of course, that terrible crime which Cain killed Abel. And we don't want even a reminder of that. We want to, or rather, maybe we do need a reminder of it so that we don't fall into jealousy and we don't fall into our dignity going all the way to ego, because the extreme of dignity and kavod is becoming an egomaniac, where I decide what's going on in the world, where I feel that the world has to run according to Becher. So the extreme of that was Cain, who was the extreme of the expression of the ego that the world belongs to me. Of course, Hevel was the opposite extreme. In fact, the word Hevel means nothing. Hevel, Abel, was the opposite extreme. He looked at himself as an absolute nothing. So Judaism says you can't look at yourself as an absolute nothing, like Abel, but you cannot look at yourself as everything, as the center of existence, like Cain did. So both of those have got to be separated away from us. What we have to be is a level of dignity whereby our dignity is used so I do not do that which is wrong. I say to myself, theft, it's beneath me. Insulting someone, it's beneath me. It's beneath my dignity to do that. And on the other hand, to have a feeling, or not really on the other hand, but on the same hand really, is to use that dignity as a means of saying, you know why I've been given this greatness? Why have I been given this superiority over the animals? I've been given it, i.e. the garments, the clothing, I've been given it so that I can improve myself and improve the world and get closer to God. And therefore I wear garments which remind me of that idea. That's a little bit of an introduction to the concept of shatnez, and hopefully has made it a little less of a cock and introduced some level of understanding into that very, very strange observance that we have.
From the heart of the world, coming to you from Yerushalayim, you're tuned to the Gavriel Sanders Show.
Her life influenced hundreds of thousands. Though her voice went silent in 2016, I want to honor the legacy of Rebbetzin Esther Jungreis, Alea Shalom, in this flashback feature from the Gavriel Sanders Show some 18 years ago.
Shalom to you, dear friends. My name is Esther Jungreis, and I would like to share with you some thoughts. As you all know, I'm a survivor of Bergen-Belsen. I never thought I would have to say this. I hoped in any event that I wouldn't have to say it. But we are living today in that which reminds me of pre-Holocaust Europe. That is what this period reminds me of. Forgive me for sounding so somber. But this past year, I have spoken on almost every continent. Yes, really on every continent. To Jewish communities all over the world. And I see an escalation in anti-Semitism. And our people are sleeping. We are unaware. Just like we were prior to Hitler. We don't want to hear, we don't want to know. To be sure, there is one huge difference between yesterday and today. Yesterday, Hitler and Marshallman had to engage Catholic cause, had to build slave labor camps, concentration camps, gas chambers, crematoriums. Today, Khalila, God forbid, just has to push a button. What are we doing about it? And if you are going to say to me that in the United States we are protected, well, look around. Take a good look. Of course, in the 21st century, it is politically incorrect to have bias against Jews. You just don't have bias against Jews. Anti-Semitism is not acceptable. But the anti-Semite always finds a way of packaging his hatred and his prejudice. So today it's not I'm anti-Jewish. Today it's Israel that is being demonized. And Israel is demonized all over the world. Israel has become an apartheid state. Who says that? Nazis? No, an ex-president of the United States. And this ex-president of the United States meets with Hamas, whose aim and purpose is, Khalila, God forbid, to annihilate and exterminate Am Yisrael. And right next door to Eretz Yisrael is Ahmadinejad. And what is his purpose? To push that button. And the world doesn't want to know. Israel has been portrayed as a nation of occupiers. And the tragedy is that there are many secular Jews who have become self-haters and have come to believe this lie. They do not understand that we have returned to our land after almost 2,000 years of exile by the grace of God. And that land has been given to us as an inheritance for all times, for eternity. By who? By Hashem, by God himself. You know, it's a funny thing. It's written, Bereshit bara Elokim et hashemayim v'et haaretz. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And you all know the famous Rashi, the great commentator, who asks always very profound and cryptic questions. Why? Why does the Torah commence with Genesis, Bereshit? It should have commenced with the first commandment. After all, the Torah is a book of commandments. It's not a book of history. Why with Genesis? And Rashi answers in the name of his father that one day a generation will come that is going to say, "Listen at them, you are thieves, you took the land by force, it doesn't belong to you." And at that time, the Jewish people have to proclaim, this land was given to us by God. It's ours. God gave it to us. So some cynics would ask, you mean the nations are going to listen to that? Yes, they will, if we believe it. The tragedy is that our representatives do not believe it. They see themselves as occupiers. They don't understand because the Torah is a closed book to them. We have expertise in every field, knowledge in every subject, and our own Torah, we, the people of the book, our own Torah eludes us. So we have Holocaust on two levels. Holocaust threatening our physical survival, Holocaust threatening our spiritual survival. We have internal and external threats. Internally, we are bleeding, we are hemorrhaging. Intermarriage is constantly escalating. You know, I was interviewed by a reporter once out of town who said to me that I compared the spiritual Holocaust to the real Holocaust. And they said, how could you do that, they said to me. How could you say that there is a spiritual Holocaust? I said, it's even more devastating than the physical Holocaust. Because I lost my grandparents, my family in the Holocaust. They perished in Auschwitz. But today they are all alive because all my children and grandchildren carry their names and their legacy. But after assimilation, alienation, intermarriage, there is no one even to say a Kaddish. It's over. It's gone. So we have internal and external Holocaust. And tragically, we cannot even say that those who live in Israel are immune to this. When I spoke in Israel many years ago, I said, "Ha-tragedia shel dorenu," the tragedy of our generation. "L'daber balashon hakodesh," to speak in the holy tongue. "V'lo lodat kitzad lehitpalel," and not to know how to pray. "Lichyot be'ir Hashem," to live in the city of God. "V'lo liyot bal emunah," and to believe. Ha-tragedia shel dorenu, the tragedy of our generation. So if you are listening to me, dear friends, it's time to wake up. What should we do? What's the solution? Easy. I always, in all my lectures, in all my writings, I always say, Hafoch bo de kulabo. Turn the pages, everything is in it. What pages am I referring to? Of course, the Torah. For everything that we are concerned with, every challenge, every dilemma, we can find in the Torah to give us illumination and guidance. So what illumination can we find for our present predicament? Of course, it's right there. The story of Purim. Same address, ancient Persia, today's Iran. Ahmadinejad of today, Haman of yesterday. Same agenda. Lahashmit, lahavagul abed, et kol haYehudim, to annihilate and to exterminate all the Jews. What did our forefathers do? Who came to help them? Who? Any nations come forth? But any protests? Anyone speak up on their behalf? From all the families of the nations, did anyone speak up on their behalf? Absolutely not. So what did our forefathers do? Esther and Mordechai summoned the nation with two amazing magic words that made a nahapachu. Nahapachu means turn the entire situation around. Me'eva le'yontav, from sorrow to joy, to celebration. Mechushech la'or, from darkness to light. What were those two words? Kimu v'kiblu, they re-accepted and recommitted to Torah. Can we do it? Absolutely. It's in our spiritual genes. We just have to wake up and realize what is happening. Hashem is calling us. There are no coincidences in Jewish history. Chalila, Chalila, God forbid. We cannot allow another tragedy to occur. We have to wake up. Ura Israel, wake up. And Hashem will show us the way. I want to wish all of you blessings, Yiddish naches. We should be privileged to see children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren following the path of our Torah. My name is Esther Jungreis. Shalom.
Here on the Talkline Network, you are listening to Gavriel, the Gavriel Sanders Show.
Rabbi Pinchas Taylor of the American Faith Coalition is a rising voice in and beyond the Jewish world. Today he explains the background on the well-known Star of David.
Today we're going to be giving a little bit of history and insight into the Star of David symbol. It's known in Hebrew as the Magen David, which literally means the shield of David. The truth is that the interlocking symmetrical triangle was a common symbol in the East, in the ancient world. The hexagram also was very common in Shinto belief in Japan and an astrological figure in Persia. The history of the Star of David itself, nobody's really quite sure where it originated or how it became like such a prominent identifiable symbol with Judaism. The earliest archaeological source is an ancient synagogue in northern Israel that dates to the 6th century BCE. The carving that's on the synagogue depicts a victorious Babylonian king and a defeated king of Judah with a 6-pointed star above his head. Other examples are from history. There's a 2,000-year-old Star of David carved on a stone in a synagogue in Peking. There's a 6-pointed star in the ancient mosaic floor in Ein Yael and the Kfar Shura synagogue in Rosh Pina in the Upper Galilee. There is a coastal city in southern Italy that has a Jewish tombstone with the Star of David on it that dates from the 3rd century. Some take this idea of the shield of David literally, thinking that it was a symbol that was on the shields of David's army. Reb Tzvi Elimelech Shapira of Dinov says that there was actually a menorah on the shields of David's army. The Akedas Yitzchak said that Psalm 67, which is written sometimes in the shape of menorah, you'll see in some Sephardic prayer books this as well, that was what was written on King David's shields. Perhaps there is a connection between the 7 branches of the menorah and the 6 points of the star with that center space as well. There could be a likely connection between those as well. The Talmud, the Gemara in Gittin, says that King Solomon had a seal that was used to control demons. Now, although the Talmud says that this seal was a name of God, various oral traditions teach that it was either a 5 or 6-pointed star. From these traditions come many amulets that incorporate either a 5-pointed or a 6-pointed star to protect from malevolent forces. In ancient Kabbalistic texts, like Sefer Raziel, the book of the angel Raziel, Hamalach, it uses a 6-pointed Star of David or other various stars in the construction of amulets. Unfortunately, many occult groups throughout the ages and until today use these stars, either the 5-pointed seal of Solomon or the 6-pointed shield of David, in their magic practices. Judaism is clearly opposed to any of that. So again, some people suggest that King Solomon and his seal are the source for the Star of David, or for this being a Jewish symbol. It has there's little support for this theory, but it is such an idea. The Samaritans have a tradition that a 6-pointed star represents the 6 cities of refuge. The Samaritans were a group that broke off from the early Hebrews. They have a tradition that the 6-pointed star represents the 6 cities of refuge. It may be that the armor during the Bar Kokhba rebellion was engraved with a Star of David. After all, the word Bar Kokhba means the son of the star. There's legends that the star was on the battle gear of the Maccabees as well. As time continued, the symbol became more prevalent. We see it on the Leningrad Codex, which is the oldest complete manuscript of the Hebrew Bible, which dates to around 1000 CE. In the 14th century, there were Hebrew Bibles from Spain that had this Star of David printed on it. In Sefer HaGvul, a 13th century Kabbalistic work by Rabbi David ben Yehuda HaChassid, he was the first one to unite this symbol of a 6-pointed star with the words Magen David, the shield of David, that hexagram-shaped star that we identify with. During this period, throughout the Middle Ages, it was interchangeable, a 5-pointed star, a 6-pointed star, and then eventually became designated, as time continued, the 5-pointed star being the shield of Solomon, the star of Solomon, or the sign of Solomon, seal of Solomon, and the 6-pointed shield of David. In the 1400s, the Jews of Prague chose to display the 6-pointed star on their communal flag. Likewise, this was done with the Jews in Budapest. In the 1600s, the Jews of Vienna incorporated it as their communal seal as well. And in the 1800s, the symbol spread to Jewish communities throughout the world. And what put it over the top was when it was adopted as a symbol of Zionism by the Second Zionist Congress in 1898. Some of the symbolism that has been associated with it through various sources, the Eretz HaChaim on Tehillim says that there's an allusion to Jewish kings using this banner, that the ancient Jewish kings would use a banner that had a similar symbol on it. A six-pointed star was in ancient times a representation of royalty. It represented royalty. Another idea that's brought up about what the significance of the Shield of David, the Star of David is that it may be a reminder of God's dominion over the entire world in all six directions, up, down, right, left, forward, and back. In Jewish mysticism, the mystics say that the two triangles represent the physical and the spiritual world, like almost as if they're two arrows, one pointing up, one pointing down, and it's the merge of the physical and spiritual, as well as the relationship between God and mankind. The 10 spheres, the 10 attributes in which godliness is described as expressing itself to the world, were also represented many times in Kabbalistic books through the image of a six-pointed star. And it's interesting, take it or leave it, it's just an interesting fact, that all of the letters of the Hebrew alphabet can be formed using the lines of this star. So again, the Star of David has a long history of loose association with Judaism, and as time progressed, its prominence as a Jewish symbol, and only as a Jewish symbol, grew. I believe that the ambiguity of the Star of David's origin and the fact that we're not really sure 100% how it became a part of Judaism is because, why the ambiguity? Because Torah has always been the symbol of the Jewish people. We didn't need a banner or a symbol or a flag or all the other things that all the other nations of the world have. We have a symbol, Torah. Torah is what represents us. Many people, other faiths, other nations, whatever, they tend to need or desire something that symbolizes them, what they represent, what they need, and have to craft either, some sort of symbol or imagery. Jews have Torah. Torah is what we live on. Torah is what beats through our veins, makes our heart beat, what makes our blood flow. So if a Jew really wants to connect with the ultimate Jewish symbol, should embrace a little bit more Torah.
This program showcases people, organizations, and opportunities for making a difference. Tune in next week for another freshly baked edition of the Gavriel Sanders Show. You can reach Gavriel at gavrielradio@gmail.com. That's GAVRIEL radio@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.